So, we went to a book signing.
Yeah, I think the first time we met,
Right.
I met you, was at a book signing.
Yeah. And it just so happens I run into an old friend and classmate that I haven't seen in, 20, how many years? Oh, God, I feel old now.
We graduated in 96.
25?
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's been a minute.
Ugh. My God.
It doesn't feel like that long, though.
No, it doesn't, but whatever. We're getting old and everything's relative.
And you know what I keep saying? I mean, I just had my 43rd birthday in June, that if you're not getting older, you're dead. So it's just good to, like, I'm trying to, like, embrace. Yeah, it's a privilege to get older.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if we look back at school and be like, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. But, we... I had heard that you were writing. I don't remember through who. I might have saw your reunion, maybe?
Yeah. Were you at the 10? No, what was it? The 15? Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah. The last one, yes. I think I saw you at the last one. Yeah, maybe the 20 year.
And, it just, when I found out that you were doing, food journalism and everything, I was just blown away and jealous as hell. Because that's the dream gig, buddy. Dream gig.
Yeah.
So tell me, why don't you go ahead and tell us how you got into food journalism and journalism, period, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So I always loved to write. I was an English major in college.
Where did you go?
Dickinson, Pennsylvania, Carlisle. And I don't know, there was always something. I was always like a creative kid. I'm actually, my oldest daughter is going to the Wallingford, she's going to camp this week at the Wallingford Art Center, Community Art Center it's called. And I used to go there and my parents just always were like, yeah, and they do whatever you want, do whatever makes you happy. But there was always something inside that I was like, I don't think I can make money doing that. Like, I don't think I could support myself doing that. Or and so I just always sort of was like finding other things. I worked in other capacities. I was a photo editor at People for a long time. I worked at Time Inc. I started as an assistant there years ago. And like I said, when my daughter was born, I resigned from that job as a photo editor, even though I loved working there. Just like great group of people. It's a gossip, magazine, but really it's a lifestyle magazine is what we called it, and or a human interest magazine. And I loved just besides just doing I would always come back to do I always stayed in the loop there. Like I left, but I would come back and help with the award show nights and things like that. I would cover the Oscars. Like I was a photo editor, so I was like photoshopping stuff. It was fun. Yeah. It was really fun. But I didn't love it enough to leave Benny, my oldest daughter, to do it, especially like the financial part, like the nanny situation and all of that. So anyway, I left, and then a couple years later, I was asked to come back to help in the photo department. The photo director had left, and they asked me to come back to oversee the photo department for 2 months until they hired a replacement. And I knew the way that back then it was Time Inc., the way that it worked, that it was going to be a lot longer, and ended up coming back on a part-time basis. And while I was there, I befriended an editor who was in charge, and she still is actually. She was at Rachel Ray magazine. Her name is Sanal Dutt, and she's still the lifestyle director. So she does all the food. She does. I don't know if you've seen People magazine lately, but they have.
I haven't.
It's cool. I mean, they do a digital part of it, and then there's also like, Garth Brooks's favorite chicken, and they go to his house and they like photograph his chicken and photograph him doing it. It's cool. So she's in charge of that, and I just started. I told her I was interested in writing, and I just started writing for like a low stakes. Was getting paid as a photo editor, but like,
hey, what do you think of this type thing?
Yeah, can I write a few things? I really like doing this, and just was it was a way for me, like, I would work my hours and then come home and after putting Benny to bed and like write a story about, a few of the early ones I did were like, the new Girl Scout cookies came out. How do me and my daughter like them? And I would do like a first person essay on like, Benny thinks they're great, like, or that kind of stuff. And,
sure.
And it was just fun, and I loved writing, and I thought, look, I'm going to be totally honest, like, I could not do this job when I was 25.
Why?
Because should I just get real with you? Like,
sure,
I have a chronic illness. I have Crohn's disease. I'm totally fine,
really?
like healthy, fine. but I mention it to say that like I need health insurance, and like I couldn't, being a freelance writer, you know, I mean, honestly, before Obamacare, I had no chance at like being able to afford health insurance and be on the sort of rates that you usually get paid as like a young freelance writer. Right. And there's like a weird irony about it because when you're 25, you have like tons of time and you have tons of, you know, at least I did. And you know, I don't know how much you guys know about like travel writing and food writing, but like I get invited on like lots of awesome press trips where they'll say like, come check out the harvest in Napa, like for 3 days, you know, and they pay for your airfare. And the thing is that you are expected to write about it. Like it's a part of the job, you know, it's work, but it's also like an amazing perk of the job. I got to go to Iceland for my birthday this year.
Wow.
And it was actually, I stayed at the Blue Lagoon, but it was right near there, and so nice. And
have you been there?
Reykjavik?
Yeah.
It's actually like one of my favorite places.
Can't talk about it.
To both of you.
Oh, really?
Right.
Wait,
we can go.
You should go. And honestly, it's like 4 hours away. Like I tell everyone, it's like one of my favorite places. And this is why I've written about the butter there, because do you guys like butter?
Love butter.
Okay.
Breathing.
It's the best part about Europe.
Am I breathing? So, okay, the butter, side note, is better than any fucking butter on the planet. I will stand by this. Like, it's better than, I feel like I'm going to get hate mail from people
Kerry
from
Gold.
France.
It's better than Kerry.
It's better than Irish butter. It's better than French butter. No, listen, it's, I don't like, I'm not a yogurt person.
So is it just higher butter fat?
They mix yogurt into the butter.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And it's whipped, and they put like some like lava salt on top, like just like salt.
Being like that being a thing.
Holy mother of baby Jesus. Like I was like, you're going to need to keep this butter coming. Like, just keep it coming. And so, you know, I get to do things like that, which is amazing. So, like, let's say, like, when you're 25, that's, like, a much easier thing to do when you're not encumbered by, like, my beautiful children and, you know, my other thing, you know. But anyway, but I could never do that job then because I just couldn't have afforded it. Like, I would have, you know, so I will say that doing this job as a freelance writer, I know, like, I will fully admit how lucky I am that I have, like, a supportive partner, you know, my husband. You know, I work really hard. Like, I do fine, but I couldn't, like, I couldn't.
Right. You couldn't have the life that you do now.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Understood.
I mean, just so yeah, it's I don't know if this is, like, that's totally off topic, but the point is that I really enjoy what I do. I'm so glad that I get to do it. Yeah. You know, so yeah, I started writing there, and then I was honestly like scrappy. I was like 36. I had one daughter. I think I was pregnant with my second, and I just turned those like few bylines and on people.com into like more bylines by like pitching stories. And so I started writing for Vogue.com after that. It also was like, you know, hey, a friend of mine works at Vogue.com. Like, can I introduce you?
Is it a small world?
Especially like in New York, like just that sort of media world is like, is people know one another, which is why you should not be a dick and like, you know, do your best. And, you know, like it's like in any other world. I'm sure you guys have the same situation. But you want to do a good job. You want to sort of like, you know, and like keep the ball rolling. Right. So like I started with the people.com things, and that was able to get me a couple of other things. And, you know, I started writing for Food 52, I think was like my first food outlet. It's like
weekly, obviously.
So no, it's a website, and it was started by two women. I believe one of them was from the New York Times. It was funny because I remember at the time telling people, one of my daughters was going to like preschool, and I remember telling some of the moms like, yeah, like I was writing for people.com, and they were like, that's cool. And then I was like, oh yeah, and I'm writing a story for Food 52, and they were like, what? That's amazing. And they paid me $25 to write those stories, by the way.
Hell yeah.
I was writing them. And honestly, again, like I was lucky to have like sort of the help.
It's like being an open micer for comedy.
Exactly. Yeah. You're just like, you fake it till you make it. You know,
Absolutely.
like I just like, and so like that was about 7 years ago. And I just kept on pitching stories and trying to get myself out there.
Were you getting perks when you were doing this?
So in the beginning, it's weird, Pat. There was one time I remember I wrote a story. The minute my story published for Vogue.com, I remember getting my first email, like inviting me to Paris for like 2 or 3 days. And I remember just like, it was like, whoa,
Yeah.
there's a whole world that I'm like,
Now you got a little bit of credibility behind you.
which was like barely any credit. You know, I mean, again, fake it till you make it. I'm all
Sure,
about that. Like as long as like you're working hard and so that was like 6 years ago maybe.
Wow.
And like I said, I mean, I think I told you, forgive me for this like total, you know, spaz brag moment, but 2 or 3 days ago, I opened the mailbox and got my first, you know, picked out the travel and leisure from my mailbox, and there was my story in there. And
Awesome.
so like
Great
6
feeling.
years later, it was an awesome feeling. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep trying to keep the ball rolling,
great.
you know.
It's great.
Someone told me in the beginning, you're only as good as your last byline. So
Food business is like that too.
Fame
yeah,
fades
yeah.
fast.
Fast-ish,
Yeah, fame fades fast. There's no fame. But I like it a lot, and I am honestly, I will say like the best part about the food writing for me is, you know, besides the travel, is like I freaking love meeting new people and hearing their stories. I just love it. It is the best part of this job. Like there's like a moment, does this happen to you guys? Like
Sure.
where you're like,
That's why we're in it.
I
we're
can't
doing this
believe,
podcast.
like I can't believe I get to like learn about this. Like I can't believe you're telling, like I don't know, like do you guys like to travel?
Love it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think that being in the bar business, in a neighborhood bar business, that is one of the things. It's like, because I've worked, you know, I worked in Ireland and I worked around Philly and, you know, New England and whatnot. And I used to love meeting new people. And in a neighborhood bar, you don't get that rotation like you would.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're getting
You do get
regulars.
some, but it's not the same. And
Yeah.
a lot of times I'm like, damn, I wish I was doing something else. But at the same time, I'm very grateful for what I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I was just actually telling after we saw each other at the book event, I was telling some friends in Philly that like about you and about how our history together and what you guys are doing. And one of the guys I was telling was like, can we go right now to Dolan's? Like, can we go like this minute?
It's a
Like,
cool dive bar.
yeah, it's amazing.
And you know what? I really started in the last 5 or 6 years grabbing onto that identity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because people always call it like an Irish pub and shit like that. Well, obviously the name's Irish, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like Joe says, it's Shamrocks and Bud Lights. You know what I mean? But we're a dive bar, and I hit the genetic dive bar lottery by being born who I am. You know what I mean? And we really, really grab that identity and go for it, and we do quirky shit with it.
Was there a time where you like tried to push away that identity?
There was a time where I tried to push away from the bar, period, because of addiction. You know what I mean? Like when I was like 30, I had a massive pill problem because I stopped drinking and you know, doing the extracurriculars. And I would always take a Percocet when I went to bed or when I would wake up in the morning for a hangover. So everybody thought I stopped drinking and, you know, being the bad boy. And that one Percocet a day turned into 1,000 milligrams worth of Oxycontin in a year.
Oh my God, Pat, I'm so sorry.
No, listen, I'm grateful
good
I
for
went
you.
through it. My life is incredible now because of it. You know what I mean? That adversity that I went through and the change in my life and the change in my direction, it made me the man that I am now, and I wouldn't change my road at all. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I feel like an asshole for being the bad boy for 10 years, but at the same time, I'm so grateful for how it turned out. You know what I mean? Because at that point, it made me step away from the family business. And, you know, I handed the reins back to my father, and I was like, look, I can't do this anymore. I'm the one who went to everyone's like, look, I got an issue. I got to get in. And I went in rehab, you know. And at that point, I was like, I gotta get away from people, places, and things. So I went out to work in the casino business. I worked at Margaritaville. I was the opening bar manager down there, and we were probably the largest grossing restaurant in the country at that time. I think we did 15 million in the first year, and 60% of it was alcohol, and I was the only manager.
Holy shit, where was this?
Atlantic City.
Okay, they just opened one in Times Square, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Or
like
they're doing
fascinated by that. Like
it's an amazing brand.
Volume.
What they do, yes,
Yeah.
and that's why I have a very unique perspective on the business because I grew up in the bar business where, you know, it's cash business, and, you know, my father taught me the envelope system. But I went to Johnson & Wales and I learned food there, and, you know, I was a chef for a long time, and I teach it now in North Philly at Simon Gratz. But then I went to work for Big Box, so I got to see that other side.
Yep.
So having that, like, those worlds combined is what made me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's all who you surround yourself with. That's why I hang out with this guy.
Yeah. I think Eric told me once that he read somewhere that your life is like sort of a, it's like the 5 people that you spend the most time with, like is sort of like your average. And I always think about that because it's like, who do I want to be spending, like to make you a better person, which is Joe, obviously,
outside of the family,
who's created all of this.
He's me, my baby.
That's so, I would love to talk to you more about that sometime. I'm just like really interested in like first of all, I'm really interested in like Times Square businesses in general, and like Atlantic City, same thing.
They do an amazing job of selling escapism.
Yeah.
And I realized this a long time ago too. Like the bar business, you're selling atmosphere. You're not selling a fucking product.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, the vibe. Like that's the whole reason you choose something, right? Is that like that's the kind of. But like, I guess I'm just so fascinated by like how on earth
the volume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
it's systems. It's all systems. It's it's a food prep. You have a team of food prep that come in the morning that do everything. Everything's bagged, and they do a lot of things fresh. I'll give them credit for what they do food wise. When it comes to liquor, it's just volume and volume and volume, and with that, it's all about number crunching. As far as like your liquor cost has got to be under 18%. If it's over 18%, the company's looking at you like, we're going to get rid of this cat. And it's inventory. I remember doing inventory for 20 hours a day, once a week, because we had a problem. We had a thief.
Did you figure out who it was?
We did. But everyone's like, we think it's you. And I was like, it ain't me. And I'll tell you who it is. And
as soon as I spend these 20 hours a day.
Right. And eventually, like, God damn, he was right. You know what I mean? And it was, I don't want to say on,
of course.
on this, but.
Holy shit. Wow.
Yeah. And when you're talking, you're doing, $8 million a year in just liquor. That's, it's incredible when you're dealing with volume like that. It's so much easier managing 50 people than it is 5. Because
of the systems that are in place.
And because you're not giving way. You're not like, oh, my buddy, I'll let him come in late today.
Right.
It's such an easier game to do.
And you're not giving like the power. I mean, with 5 people, each of those people has more power than like, and I don't mean that in like a union type of way.
Correct,
I just mean like that you're not screwed if one person out of 50 doesn't versus like one person out of 5 doesn't show up for work or whatever.
Exactly. Today, if one person leaves, 20% of our labor force.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. No, and
so
that's
we would typically have about 18 bartenders on at a shift.
Wow.
Between we had 3 bars in actual Margaritaville itself. We also had a 5 o'clock summer bar. There was a Flair bar on the casino floor, and I was the manager of that too. But yeah, I didn't know how to do Flair. I had to fake it until I made it. Just
what
like
is Flair? What's Flair?
Cocktail.
No, stop.
Oh, hell yeah.
Did you do that?
No. Pretending like I know what I was talking about. I'm like, yeah, Jimmy, your flipping game sucks today. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
But I'll give you for
You're
instance.
like, let me show you. Never mind. Let me tell you.
I had a hunch on a bartender on a Sunday afternoon that he was stealing from us. And we did what's called a drawer pull. Do you know what that is?
No.
All right. So at a register, POS, cash, doesn't matter.
Okay.
You're ringing up, right? And there's 1,000 ways to steal. But what a manager does is they'll go in and say, okay, we're going to switch drawers out right now. So you go in, you got a fresh drawer, you're doing a pull of the revenue at that point, and you're counting to make sure it's correct.
Got it, okay.
If they're over, they're stealing.
Got it.
Guy was on for 2 hours. What do you think the register was over?
Over meaning
He's leaving extra money in the register, basically.
He wasn't ringing it up.
At the end, puts it
so
in his
at the end, when he's doing his drawer, handing it into the cash office, he's keeping the
rest
difference.
of it. Got it.
He was $450 over in 2 hours. We estimated he stole $30,000 in 2 months.
When he takes, this is fascinating. Where is that money coming from? The $450, like meaning he's not giving enough money back to people.
He's telling people, or there's also another way. It's called dropping dupes. So you can literally, suppose you come in and you order 2 margaritas or whatever, and you print that out. He then holds that ticket, drops that same cash ticket again for somebody else.
Got it.
And then puts it in his pocket.
Got it. Okay.
There's all kinds of systems
like
you can
sneaky
do.
little ways to
do
that.
Like putting pennies or markers for how many drinks you've stolen. Like there's all kinds of shit.
When you walk over with like the cash drawer, is he like literally shitting his pants?
He didn't know what was happening at the time, and most of the managers never did a drawer pull there before, so they were like, "What's Pat doing?" So I pulled it out, and once I did it, I was like, "I'm doing your ring." I was like, "Everything's cool, buddy." And I took the drawer out, and I was walking back to the cash office, and I was like, "You're gonna have to come with me." And he's like, "Is it cool if I go smoke a cigarette real quick?" I'm like, "Don't go anywhere." And that fucking dude just bolted down the boardwalk. Bolted.
I know, like never to be seen from
Never
again.
to be seen again.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we arrested people after him, like you're going out in fucking cuffs.
Wow.
Because
you want to like make sure everybody sees that you're like.
Atlantic City's a fascinating town.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated for it. Have you ever been to what's the sandwich place there? White
Castle. Or,
no, not White Castle. I was going to say White Castle. Yeah, the hoagie place.
White. Damn it. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I like think sometimes about like just driving down there to try it sometimes.
It's okay.
Yeah, really? Okay, good to
listen,
know.
we know good sandwiches in this town.
We do know good sandwiches in this town.
Damn, White. Anyway, so what's fascinating about Atlantic City, like a lot of major cities, is that it's a very small network, right? Everybody's a veteran in that town. Right?
Of like the industry.
Yes, you're not getting anybody in that town that's like green. Excuse me. It's very rare. So everybody knows everybody. When we did hiring there, we rented out the convention center, and we saw, I want to say it was 5,000 people in 3 days, and that hiring process alone was probably one of the greatest educational experiences. We had a tier system. Like if you showed up and you weren't drunk, or if if you didn't have shit stains on the back of your shorts,
crushed it.
You get to go to station number 2.
Wow.
Crazy. And it would just go on and on and on upwards. It was very intense.
So have you taken any of those lessons back to your bar?
Fuck yeah, absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
Is there anything that because I mean, obviously, like the scale is so big, but I'm curious if there's anything that's sort of like scaled down to like what you're doing.
Well, I mean, yeah, just the control systems themselves, and a lot of it is just feel too. Like, there's so much shit that goes on in Atlantic City as far as like, I mean, 2:00 in the afternoon, there's a guy in the middle of the lobby, 12-inch hard on jerking off. Like,
no.
Oh, it's nuts. I saw a girl get roofied at 1:00 in the afternoon sitting at the bar on a Sunday.
What'd you do?
So, again, Atlantic City, can't touch anybody, right? You're not allowed to touch anybody. She was with another girl. She sat at the bar. Next thing I know, the other girl gets up and leaves, and I noticed she didn't have a pocketbook with her, right? So the other girl took the pocketbook, and she just stood up, and it was like a zombie. She was walking into tables, and I'm like, I called security, but before security even got there, she was walking towards a flight of steps.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, she's going to fall down these steps. So I just literally stood in front of the steps and let her bounce off me back and forth.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, just bounce off my chest. Like, there's so much shit that goes on in that town.
And you like can't touch.
Can't touch.
Yeah.
Can't put your hands on, but you could
Yeah.
block.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a wild town.
This feels like, I mean, that's like what I loved about living in New York.
Yes.
Like, honestly.
It's very,
it's
the homeless person shit in the middle of the day, right?
Well, and like every weird shit. Like a lot of people say like, what do you think about moving to Philly from here? And I know what people want me to say because I'm from here, and I know that if I don't say the right thing, they're going to be like, get the out of here.
So what's the right thing?
The right thing is like, oh, Philly's so much better than New York, of course. But I have more complicated feelings than that.
But is it Regan? Is it that much better than New York?
No, I mean this is what I'm going to tell you. It's been 5 years that we left Brooklyn. It's only been 4 years that we moved into the city. That's a whole different story. We moved in, and then there was like, we lived on 21st and Walnut. There was like a massive mouse infestation in our house that an Alan Dom person let us move into, my family of 4, and I then became pregnant soon after that. It wasn't Alan Dom, by the way, and you can cut that out, but that they let us, like the young realtor, let us move into this house, just renting. Anyway, we had to move 4 months later. We moved in with Bob and Pat Fletch, and Eric, my dear, sweet, wonderful husband. We're like, okay, we'll buy a house. We're just gonna buy a house now. We pulled the trigger, and it was like, we thought it was going to be like 2 to 3 month process, and then we found something in Graduate Hospital. It was a gut reno, so it took like a year, and we were living with my parents. I had a baby in that time. Poor Eric. Anyway, so it's been about 4 years that we moved to the city. I have like a very long list of shit that I love about Philadelphia, of things that I love about Philadelphia. Number one is our home. I mean, I
couldn't afford in New York.
You guys, when we were living in Brooklyn, which by the way, like my neighborhood in Brooklyn also is like my favorite place that I've ever lived. Like just that neighborhood. Like I just, I lived there for 10 years.
What part of Brooklyn?
It's called Borum Hill. It's like kind of near like Brooklyn Heights. Do you know where the Barclays Center is? It's like a half a mile from the Barclays Center. And I have a lot of just like nostalgic feelings about, like I said, 2 babies brought home there, moved there. Eric was working at Etsy, and we just have like I was working at People. We had a great life there. We have lots of great friends. But then our neighborhood became like kind of, it was it was already nice when we moved there, but we moved in the downturn in the economy in like 2008, and we got a great deal, and we're like renting, and then all of a sudden like Ethan Hawke became our neighbor, and I can say these names because you two, I'm assuming, I mean you're my age, I'm assuming we're ish the same age.
We're 10 days apart.
Okay, most when I tell people these stories and they're like in their 20s, I get a fucking blank look, and I just want to punch a wall. 'Cause I'm like, Ethan Hawke?
It's fucking Ethan Hawke.
Ma'am, this is fucking hurtful, okay? But he became our neighbor. I remember he used to do dog tricks for, super nice guy. He used to do dog tricks for Benny. Like I asked one day if she could pet his dog, and he like pulls bacon out of his pocket and starts doing dog tricks. Carrie Russell, do you guys know Carrie Russell? She was in,
the name. Yeah.
She's so pretty. She was in Felicity, which was like a hot show that when you guys weren't watching that. Eric used to come home from runs and be like, I saw this really attractive mom on my run. And then I realized it was Felicity, Carrie Russell. Anyway, so our neighborhood kind of became a thing. And when I was pregnant with Blake, our second daughter, they were putting up townhouses on our street. There were 4 of them. Guess, just take a wild stab in the dark what each one was going for.
I don't know, Joe. You think
1.6.
9.9, Joe.
Oh shit.
1.6. I would shit myself if I could. No. But like 9.9 is just like an insane amount of money. It's like it's an absolutely wild amount of money.
It's like Malibu money, man.
It's Russian oligarch money.
Yeah,
like
you're
it's
right.
like
You're right.
it's like middle.
Russian
don't please don't write that. I mean,
it's unattainable.
But it's unattainable, and that's so like Eric. For years, actually, we talked about like, what are our options? Like, where are we going to move? And we talked about like moving further into Brooklyn, and that seemed great. But honestly, I was like, at that point, like, we're living an hour away from the city. Like, what's the point? And then we talked about moving to Jersey City because we had lived there briefly before we got married.
That's where I lived from 2004 to 2014.
No way. Jersey City, whereabouts?
In Newport, Pavonia.
I was we were on Observer off of Observer Highway on Marin Boulevard, and it was called the Zephyr. That's so funny.
I know the Zephyr well. Yeah, we were neighbors.
We were there in 2004, I think, because 2006. So we were neighbors. Because Eric and I got married in 2007, and that he got a job in LA, and we moved from there. But we lived in the Zephyr for like a year and a half.
Nice.
And I loved living there.
Our office was next door to the Iron Monkey.
No way.
The bar, and guess who one of our top clients were? Time Inc.
Oh,
Cyber.
Out. Oh, that's
it's just so funny.
What was the company called?
Vigilant.
Cool.
Remember Renee, the Chief Information Security Officer?
I do remember Renee.
She was. I'm real tight with Renee.
I was
awesome.
like, that's so cool. Wow, we have more to talk about there too. Anyway, so we talked about where to move. And Eric, like I said, went to Swarthmore. I grew up around here. And for years we would like come down on the weekends and just like, can we do like, should we move?
Day trips and shit.
Yeah, day trips, spend the weekends, like to drop Benny off at my parents and spend the night at like the Sofitel or something.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
that's where Dykstra stays, by the way.
Shut up.
Swear to God.
How can he afford that?
Because I paid for it.
My God, shut up, Pat. Oh my God, it's too rich for his blood, man.
Nah.
But yeah, so we came down here and like the house, I mean, 9.9 million is like you said, an unattainable amount of money. Yeah. So we have this great house that we love. Like, it's hilarious because when we got a realtor and I remember he was showing us places and I remember walking out and being like, this is the biggest house I've ever seen. And he's like, lady, it's not that big. Like, it's not. It's like a very modest place that we
New York huge.
But it's like, it's New York huge. I think they are so happy with like ex-New Yorkers coming to Philly.
Yeah, sure.
So let me ask you, between New York and Philadelphia, because Philadelphia's food scene exploded in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's another thing on my list of things that I love about this city.
Yeah. Like I remember, I think it was 2016. There were 300 new restaurants open in the city of Philadelphia.
Wow.
2016.
I did not know that.
I mean, obviously,
that's the first year we moved here. The day of the DNC, we moved in. It was like 100 degrees. But yeah, so my list was like our home. I love our kids' school, and I love the food scene in Philly.
You said you've never done any food criticism as far as restaurants go, and it's got to be a tough transition, right? As far as doing pieces that you enjoy and then transitioning to being critical on someone's business.
Exactly.
I would understand why you would be hesitant on doing that because the flack, with social media, and it's brutal. And a lot of people, especially people with any notoriety, they talk about the big piece of like, don't read the comments.
Right.
Don't read the comments.
Yeah, and I also think I don't want to like play the woman card, but I also think there's I've seen it. I've like seen. I think that everybody can get flack on. Lots of men I know. A couple of writers at Philly Mag who I know well, who, just last week, one of them was getting a ton, and I think he's like bulletproof. I mean, like in terms of like emotionally, I respect that he just like doesn't care. He's like, come at me, you know? Or maybe he doesn't read the comments or whatever. Like he's very zen about it. That's not me.
You internalize it too much.
I do. I've gotten a lot better at it, to be honest. Like I don't feel like I write that much that like is controversial. I guess like so to answer your question, no, I've never been a food critic, and I've never been interested, maybe partly because I worked in restaurants. Like I worked in front of the house.
Where'd you work?
Let's see. I worked at Coconuts in Dewey Beach that was my first restaurant job. I was a waitress there.
God, what was the name of the street you stayed on senior week?
I don't know.
Me and Emery used to like, let's go over to, like you always had Tracy Chapman on, and we just would go over and ruin the scene and put on James Brown and party.
I don't remember our senior week house, but I lived, summer before junior year, I lived with Becky, Tracy, Molly, and Amy Sukup on Swede Street, and you guys, we thought that we were like kings. We got this fucking house. So were
you a waitress at
Coconuts that summer? And Tracy and Molly worked at the Waterfront, which is right next door. Okay. And I remember the day we moved in, there were mushrooms growing on the floor in the bathroom. Like it was such a shithole. It should have been no like bad mushrooms, and it was there were like, it was so disgusting and like damp that like mushrooms were growing, and there were floorboards that had holes in them, and if you dropped like a flip flop or something through the hole, it was never to be seen again. Like you were just like, where's my flip flop? I guess it's gone.
Well, you got to look at the brighter side of life, and then you got a trash can that you don't have to take out.
That's so true. And then my dad shows up he had like some business down in that area, and he took me out for my birthday for dinner. And he dropped me off afterward, and I was like, Dad, this is crazy. Like, you shouldn't be paying for a hotel room. You have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Just stay at our place. We have an extra bed. And he like dead ass looked at me and was like,
never again.
Regan, someday you'll realize that you never step foot in a place like this again. Like there'll be a day where like you never go back in a place like this. And I'm like, I remember being like, oh, it's a nice place. It was a shit storm.
You made it, right?
Yeah, yes. Oh, yes, totally. No, never going back in a place like that.
You waited tables at Coconuts?
So I waited tables at Coconuts. I was a terrible waitress. And then summer after college, I think I waitressed a little bit in college. I can't remember. Or like, I worked at like a bagel shop. And then after college, my summer after college, I moved to Nantucket. And I was a waitress at the Nantucket Yacht Club.
Oh, wow.
And it was a stressful job because we had this like terrible boss who would like, before, dinner service, he would like read off all of the like fancy famous people who were there. He'd be like, you have at table 2 the head of Ernst & Young, don't fuck it up. Like, and I'd be like, oh. I learned a lot working there, but and there were a lot of, I had a name tag that was misspelled as Reagan, like with the president, and I had a lot of, as you can imagine, just like old, very ancient white dudes being like, that's a good Republican name. And I'd be like, sir, shut it down. So I worked there. It wasn't a lot of volume, but it was like a stressful situation.
Anybody that's been in the business knows that clubs are some of the most difficult things to handle, because you're dealing with people that they're members, right? And they have what typically a food, what do they call that?
Per diem.
Yes, they have to spend a certain amount of money there. Chit. They have those chits, and
they all have special requests.
Yes. Well, and this particular restaurant, and like, look, I will say this: it was 20 years ago. I literally don't remember what year it is. It was over 20 years ago. So like things could have completely changed. But back then, I had some people super nice tables and folks who were nice, and in fact, actually, a woman who I met there who was married to a guy whose family had been like members for years. I was also in charge of like the Nantucket, the junior yacht club. So I like did programming for kids, and
assholes kids.
assholes kids, except for this lady who's really nice. And she helped me get my first job after college. I was going to move to London because I'd spent a year in Bologna, Italy in college, and I just loved living abroad. And I couldn't speak Italian well enough to move back to Italy. And so my plan was to move to London. I still can't believe, actually, now that I have kids, I'm like, how did Bob and Pat how did my parents let me do that? How were they like, cool. We just spent a lot of money on your college education.
Sure.
No problem. Like, yeah, pack up and go right to London.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, you don't have a job? Even better. Totally fine.
Have fun.
But I think, honestly, I think they were like, well, we're not giving you any money. So it's fine. Do whatever you want.
Figure it out.
And I did. And like, I literally, it was the most formative experience of my life.
Sure.
Like I had to get a bank account in another country. I had to
I did the same thing.
It was amazing. Yes. And it was amazing. Yeah. But I was going to work at a pub there, and I was going to try to go to law school. And instead of that, I met this woman at the Nantucket Yacht Club. She was so nice. And she had a friend working at Vogue House in London, and she got me a job in the photo archive. And it
that's how it started.
That's how it started.
No
I was working. It was the most non-glamorous job in the Vogue House, but I would get on the elevator and there would be
what's in the door?
Models, and shit. And Eric hates when I say this because I didn't know him at this time, but it was the best year of my life. I mean, truly, you guys, I was young and pretty, I was a young hot chick. Who says that? Am I Russian? The young hot chick. Please don't put that in there. But my friend, I was living with 3 other girls in a 1-bedroom basement flat. We just made it work. We were living in a shitty apartment. One of them was working as an intern at People, the London office in People. One of them who's still a good friend of mine. Who went on to work for as a producer on Oprah's show, but we were 22 and we just graduated. And she basically there were 3 of us who knew each other, and between the 3 of us who worked in this media adjacent jobs, I lived on going out to these free parties, and drinking champagne and
eating there,
eating there and whatever, and asking people. I can't. It's hard to look back on that and not think how the did I get make it. But it was an amazing year, and sitting in this archive basically, which was in the basement of Vogue House in Hanover Square in London, I was in charge of archiving these old issues of 1950s 1960s Vogues, and got to see these amazing photographers. And then I was seeing Conde Nast Traveler, old issues of that, and just basically oh my god, I want to be a photographer, this is beautiful. And I was worried about making it as a photographer. I was always worried about
money,
but which is
it worth my time?
Is it worth my time? And can I be sustainable doing this even, and I will say my parents are amazing. I want to put that on the record. They paid for college. They they always were you have a place to come back to no matter what, but they weren't, I had a lot of friends who were oh, my ATM is out. I'm gonna have to get my dad to and that just wasn't me. And honestly, it's not gonna be my kids because it taught me so much about it makes you scrappy and
100%.
So anyway, I did that, and I decided that I wanted to move to New York City I wanted to do photography, but I couldn't afford to go back to grad school for that. So I moved to Nantucket for 2 years. This is a random part of my story, but I met a chef on Nantucket when I was working at the yacht club. He worked at a different restaurant. We started dating, and I moved back to Nantucket after the year in London. And we dated for another, I don't know, 6 months or so.
Was it Anthony Bourdain?
It was Anthony Bourdain.
Okay.
So I'm can't believe you guessed that. Yeah. He was a nice guy that it didn't work out, but I moved back there and I worked for a photography studio for 2 years there. And I learned sort of the business of photography. I learned, in fact, it was actually, I'm so old that it was the last, I learned a lot about printing my own black and white photos. She had a dark room, and I would spend 8 hours a day printing stuff.
The red light.
Yeah, the red. Oh my god! And I would come out kind of drunk from the fumes, and literally the week I left, she got the week before I left, she got a digital SLR, the first one of the first ones that came out, and I was oh shit, I got to learn this now too. And then I moved to New York, and I was super scrappy there. I would show up to people's offices who I knew somebody who knew somebody, and be like, hi, I just want to give you my resume. You know what? I ended up getting a job because I kept interviewing for like a photo assistant at magazine, like a photo editing assistant, and they kept giving the job to the temp. Like they were like, you were second, but we have a temp who wants the job, so we're going to give it to them. And I just was like, how do I become the temp? So I cold called Time Inc.'s HR temp department and said like, I want to start temping here. So I did a temp like thing for Sports Illustrated, and then I did a temp thing for something called I don't know if you guys remember this. It's like Outdoor Life, like like it was like a shooting magazine. It was like a hunting magazine.
Yeah.
And I worked there for a little while, and then I got a job as the assistant to two like really amazing executives at Time Inc. And one of them was this guy named Mark Golan, who was the editor-in-chief of Maxim for a couple of years when it sort of burst onto the scene. Like he really made like
early 2000s.
Yeah, and it was
or late 90s maybe.
He was a real character, and we got along really well, and he helped me get my first job as a photo editor at Teen People.
Cool.
So
what drove you to the food side of it?
Well, I'm Italian. I always love food, and more than anything, like I love the stories behind the food. Like I'm really interested in like I'm interested in like the intersection of like food and travel, or like traveling through the lens of food. Like if you go to Ireland and you meet somebody there and they're using their family's recipe to make whatever. I'm just interested in that. I mean, I don't know. I doesn't everyone love food? Like
you would think. Right?
I'm like, I don't trust people.
It is the common denominator. It is.
If you ask somebody like what kind of food if they're like, I don't know, I just don't trust them. Like I don't want to be friends with that person. Anyway, so to go back to your thing, I just thought that was the longest tangent. But to go back to your thing, I don't think I could be a food critic. I've seen how hard people work in the kitchen, and that's not to say that I don't appreciate food criticism because reading reviews of restaurants because we all need those, right?
Sure.
Like we need like
the big question here is, can you do a sketch of Craig LeBon for us?
I have a photograph of him right here. No, I don't.
Peeking out the door.
Yeah. I have a mug
Have you
shot.
met him?
No, I've never met him. I've been reading his writing for a long time.
Ben Felici did an interview with him. It was probably 6 months ago, and I was going through it before we had him on here. And he did an interview with him, and if it wasn't COVID, it would have been the most ridiculous interview you've ever seen. It was a phenomenal interview, but
oh my God! Wait,
it was like, what's his name on Home Improvement?
Oh yeah, what was his name?
God damn, I forget.
By the way, it's White House.
White House.
White House.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's coming back around to that. I'm sorry.
White House subs. That's another thing. It's called subs. I'm not eating anything called subs. And they have shredded lettuce.
Good
Eat shredded lettuce.
call. It's called subs.
Yeah. And shredded lettuce.
Wilson would be the guy.
Wilson.
Thank you.
He knows
Shredded lettuce on a hoagie.
Just really? Wait, what kind of lettuce do you like on a hoagie?
I like iceberg, 100%.
But isn't shredded lettuce iceberg lettuce?
Yeah, but it's shredded and it gets soggy quicker.
Ah, interesting. I think if you can get it really fresh, I like the surface area
Agreed,
of
but
it.
it almost never happens.
You're right. No, that's true.
Because it
It's
sits out
true.
because they're doing big
100%.
production.
Yeah.
Have you been to Toledo's?
Does a fat baby sweat?
Have you had the Old World there?
I've never had a sandwich there.
The Old World at Toledo's is probably the best cold sandwich in the entire Philadelphia region.
Wow. Oh, I'm definitely going to. It's called the Old World. Yeah. I stand in line for Toledo's every Thanksgiving to bring the raviolis home.
I probably eat there 5 days a week. I mean, it's 2 doors down for me.
It's called the Old World.
The Old World.
Funny story about, this just reminded me that, you know how like, I would be curious to know if you guys have a story like this, but like, is there anything that you thought was normal in your life until like you became an adult and you're like, oh, not everybody's family does this?
Hanging out with criminals?
Yeah, probably Lenny Dykstra. Like basically I thought that it was normal to have an entire Italian, like course of Thanksgiving dinner. Like our dinner.
Normal, 100%.
Right. Like, are you
Toledo's
Italian?
raviolis. No, but I grew up in Southwest Philly. Every house was Irish, Italian,
Yes,
It didn't matter. We had like 5 Italian mothers on the block.
Yeah.
Like I knew where I was eating that day based on one of my friends' moms telling me where I'm eating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just from playing. Yeah, it's great.
South Philly.
I've never had
Southwest, but
I've never had the 7 fishes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My
We're gonna
Irish
have to
family
change that.
actually was doing that.
Oh, yeah,
and it was kind of cool. Like we did my cousin Mary Beth.
I would love to do that.
The curries.
Wait, do
And it
you
was so
want
cool.
do you want to do it?
I mean, listen, it's on Christmas Eve, right?
Yeah.
So what are you going to pull yourself away from your family? So look, I'm going to go eat with the Costanzas down the street. You know what I mean?
There are some
how you
places
doing?
in Philly.
Never
I'm going
been
to
here,
send
but-
this year. I'm going to send you a list. There are some places in Philly who do it like a week before or something.
Yeah.
Like there are a few places that do it a week before. But I thought it was normal. And Eric came to our house and was like, wait, hold up. You guys have ravioli and meatballs and spaghetti before the stuffing and the turkey comes out? And I'm like, yes, boss, we do have that.
Put sweatpants on. It's going to be a long
Yeah,
day.
get some elastic waisted pants.
What's your
fuckers.
favorite Italian restaurant?
Oh my God, that's a mean question to ask.
Nah, come on.
No, okay, I'll tell
It
you
has
this.
to go with the city, I feel like. 'Cause I
Yeah.
feel like there's difference. There's my favorites in different cities, and they
Right.
can't compete.
And also,
You know?
here's what I'll say.
That's how I
One of the things I love about Philly is that we don't have just like one type of Italian restaurant. Like
Right.
Yep.
we have Ralph's for like red gravy.
Yeah.
But I will say the one I go back to over and over and over again is Fiore. It's on like Front Street near Bainbridge, in Queen Village.
Is it the old Swanky Bubbles?
It is, it's an old something, like it's an old Canella's, there's like a building there that's sort of a random building. And the chefs, it's a husband and wife team. Justine worked she was in charge of pastry at Del Posto in New York. And her husband Ed worked for Tom Colicchio at Kraft. And first of all, I care a lot about like whether someone's nice or not. Like I'll go everywhere, but I go again and again to the places where I just
Great
think they're good
service
people. Yes.
Covers so much
Yes.
mistakes in the kitchen.
But they're also just like decent human beings. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's such a fraught world these days of like all the other bullshit. And it feels nice to just like
Great
know
point,
that
man.
you're like supporting just like really decent human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Before COVID, it was an all day cafe. They make the most amazing breakfast sandwiches on a homemade bread. And then they also make amazing, their pastry chef, Gina Nalbone, worked with Justine at Del Posto in New York. And then she moved to LA and worked at Squirrel, which was like, the hot pastry shop there. There was some drama over the summer last year about jams, but we're not going to even, but Gina is amazing. And I'm sure she had nothing to do with the jams. And she is, her pastries are like fucking life-changing pastries.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to have them. There's a morning bun that you're like,
Morning bun.
how does a baby
just
angel
sounds
made
sexy.
this? It's just fucking good, yes. And then, and honestly, it's one of those restaurants. Actually, I feel like it's a bad thing because like most of the time you're like, oh, they're known for this, like they're whatever,
Yeah, it's one
calamari
menu
or something.
item that's good.
Yeah, that
And
everybody
everything
loves
else
and
is
everybody goes
like-
there. I feel like it almost does them a disservice that every single thing they make is amazing. They make homemade
Yeah.
pasta that is out of this world. Every dish, every bite of pasta is
It's
amazing.
like the meal we just had with Ben. We went to Polizzi Social Club.
Oh yeah, Polizzi. I'm a
Yeah,
member there.
it was great.
Not to brag.
Fucking phenomenal.
I need to we should go.
Everything's
You've already
phenomenal.
been, but it's
We'll go
Yeah,
again.
it's great.
it is
I was
so
there
good. I mean
last
everything.
week
The
again.
crab spaghetti.
Were
Did
you
you go to the
really?
crab?
Yeah. Went back?
Did you get the
Yeah.
crab spaghetti?
We did. We got one of
Crab
everything.
pasta.
We literally-
Yeah,
there's
yes, we use.
four of us.
That's the move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben says we're gonna get this and just went
Yeah.
like that.
Just we got the menu.
It's the move. I actually think I have to renew my. I haven't been since COVID. It's probably anyway.
What's it? $25?
Yeah, $25 if they let me. But yeah, I would say Fiore is my favorite. But I also love. My family comes from the Abruzzo. My mom comes from the Abruzzo region. Her family of Italy, and Le Vertu on East Passyunk is like such an amazing.
I've never heard of it. What's the name of it?
Oh, you guys have to go.
Yeah.
Le Vertu. It's LE, and then it's Vertu is VIRTU. And they do this thing like Le Vertu. They do this thing every year called Panarda. Pan. I wrote about it for Food and Wine a couple years ago. It's called Panarda. 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 And it is a like historic, like from centuries old tradition of from the Abruzzo region of. It's a 40-course dinner.
God
it
damn.
literally is like you start at noon
Chef's
and you go
nightmare.
till like about 9:00 p.m. And I'm going to tell you about the biggest power move that I've ever done is Eric and I went like the summer before COVID. It's legit more than 40 courses, like with the
Jesus
other.
Christ.
And let me tell you,
What's it cost?
Damon Menapace I think it's like $400 or something. You know,
That's not bad.
I know.
Yeah.
No, it's like maybe between 4 and 5. And honestly, like it's worth every penny because to your point, it's not just about the food.
But back then was $400 a person, right?
I mean, and like they had like an accordion player who come out and you're sitting in like that's it's an amazing. What it is like an event. It's like it's like it's paying to go to like a Broadway show, but instead you're like gorging yourself on food, and every dish was. I mean, to cook for, I don't know, maybe there were 40 people there, 30 or 40 people, maybe more. He just crushed it. He did one of those, have you ever seen, I can't remember what they're called. I'm going to butcher this, but it's one of those like pasta things. It comes in like a big bowl and then you flip it around. And
yes, I know.
It's
almost like a strudel, right?
Yeah. And you pull it up and like there's like it's called like a, oh my God, I have to, it'll come to me. But anyway, during that dinner, this spot called D'Amelio's Old World Ice Treats opened, a brick and mortar. He was actually a casino dealer in AC, and he one night was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to do something that makes me happy. So he thought about opening up an ice cream truck, and he's like, I got to make my own if I'm going to make any money. He got his grandmother's recipe, and he makes this like amazing water ice, you know, for all intents and purposes. And he used to have like a little one of those like sidecars where he sold it out of on his motorcycle. And then he opened up this brick and mortar. Do you guys know Mike's Barbecue?
No.
It's like in that area. Anyway.
Yeah, somebody's just recently talking about that.
You would like it a lot. They make an awesome like fancy cheesesteak, but also like amazing everything is really, really good there. But anyway, Chris is his name, and he opened up this spot, and they had just opened it, and I had never tried it, but I had like written it about it a couple times, so I wanted to go try it. So during the 40-course dinner, we had a break, and I walked Eric over there and was like, excuse me, can we have a taste of the water ice? So he pulled out like a bunch of cups. So we had like
Did you tell everyone that you went to get more food somewhere else?
I literally was like, I am amazing. We're having 40 courses of this dinner.
We're going to step out and eat some ortolans down the street.
Hey, losers. This is all you're going to eat. My husband and I are going to go over and eat some water ice.
Lightweights.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. And that dinner was amazing. And if they do it again, which I hope they do, I highly recommend a ticket. It's just
How
like
long? 9 hours?
It's about I think we left on the earlier side after it was all done, and I think I left at 8:30 or 8:45, and they probably are out there for the rest of the day. They made an ice luge, so you could like drink like shots out of an ice luge, like not shots, it was like Amari or something, you know, Amaro. But yeah, I love Philly for that, you know, and obviously Vetri, you know, he's a controversial figure in the food industry in Philly, but
tell us why.
I definitely don't want to get hate mail for this, but like,
no, you're just,
facts.
Fact of,
let me think about why. Like, this is one thing that I think is interesting. So you and I we were starting to talk about like what the things that I love. I miss our life in Brooklyn a lot. I miss our friends a lot there, but there's a whole list, and it gets longer every year, of things that I love here. And one of the things is the food scene. And I think, the food scene in New York is in and of itself just like a powerhouse because of the sheer density. Like, right? Sure. Like you can literally get any kind of food that you want there at any time. And it's some of the best, some of the best you're ever going to taste because of the density, right? What I love about the Philly food scene, and I have always loved about it before we moved here, was because the barrier to entry has historically been, I don't know vis-a-vis the pandemic how that's going to change things, but I've always loved that because the barrier to entry, and by that I mean mostly the financial barriers. I knew people who were running spots in New York who were paying, I hope I'm not misquoting this, but like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars per month in rent. And you can't afford to purchase a place there, as I was mentioning. That's Russian oligarch money, $9.9 million for a townhouse. So you're renting a place, and then what does that mean for your place? It means that you have probably some kind of venture capital, or venture capital, but like some kind of capital investors behind you.
It's limiting who can get in the business.
It limits who can get in. It also so that barrier is already really high. It also limits a few years ago, I think right after we moved here, the food critic for New York Magazine, Adam Platt, wrote a piece about how he was so bored with Brooklyn restaurants and how, or maybe New York restaurants, I can't really remember, but it was like everywhere, it's the same decor, it's the same light bulbs, it's the same, it's the same menu. It's like 2 handmade pastas, 2 crudos,
American Restoration Hardware.
Yeah, like all of those things. And I remember reading it and thinking, you know what, I'm not bored by Matt Kahn's like weird sandwich shop, Middle Child, that he opened, that's selling just like some of the best sandwiches that you'll ever eat in your
South
entire
Philly
life.
barbacoa.
But like, or South Philly barbacoa, or the chef Adam Diltz, who is he has a place in Fishtown where he's it's called Elwood, and it's like an homage to like his Pennsylvania Dutch like upbringing. And he's you sit down
Elwood?
at like Elwood, and you sit down at like a white tablecloth, like pretty little dining room with it, like he just opened like a really beautiful little patio in the back, or area in the back, and he's bringing out like splayed rabbits and like like full rabbit dishes, and like really sort of almost like, I don't know, like cerebral Pennsylvania Dutch dishes, like through.
Not to interrupt you, but tie this into the Vetri situation.
Oh, so I was just gonna say that like the thing that I love the most, I think, about living in Philly, or like one of the top things, is that we have this sort of like diversity of ideas that can filter into our restaurants here, and all of our food outlets, not just restaurants, bars, kiosks. Like if you have an idea, you can make that happen here relatively low stakes, right?
Sure.
And I just think that makes for like a more interesting scene in Philadelphia than in any other place. And I'll say, side note, Eric and I took the girls to Providence last week for like a few days, and you lived there, right? Johnson and Wales, and I had never been there before, and the food was very good. But he looked at me. We were eating somewhere that someone had recommended to us, and he looked at me and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm really scared that I just became a Philadelphian." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He grew up in New York, like the suburbs of New York City. And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, we always laugh that people, Philadelphians, no matter where they go in the world, like they could be in fucking, a 5-star Michelin-starred restaurant, 3 Michelin-starred restaurant in Paris, and they'd be like, the food is better in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And, or like, oh, I've had better meals in Philadelphia. Yeah. And we've joked about that since we moved here, that Philly has like a bit of a complex. Again, let's make sure every listener knows that I am from Philadelphia. Sure. But it's true. Like we have a bit of a complex, and the longer I live here, the more I'm like, oh no, hell no, you didn't just talk, like taking out my earrings. Like you didn't just talk about Philly like that. But so anyway, we're in Providence and we're eating somewhere that's supposed to be really, really good. And he's like,
what was the name of it?
I don't even want to malign any place. And I'll tell you all the places we ate later. And I can't remember which of the places that we ate that he said
what
this
part
about.
Of town?
Well, we ate some good places. We ate at a place called Jahunger. That's like a Uyghur.
Philly, Providence blew up between 96 and 2003. It was a shithole prior to it. And then Buddy Cianci was the mayor up there, and he was mob connected. It was made no bones about it. So where in Providence did you eat?
We ate in like a dozen places that I thought were like very good places. I just one of the meals, and I can't remember which one, like came very highly recommended, and he just looked at me and he's like, I'm turning into a Philadelphian. And I was like, what's happening? And he's like, I'm about to say to you, the food's better in Philly. And and like he's not wrong. And I feel that, and
I feel that way a lot of times, and I feel like an asshole thinking it and saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't feel like an asshole, because I remember in the lead up to us moving here, when I was telling you that we were like coming to check out Philly, like I would pick up Philly magazine, or I've been reading the Inquirer since I was a kid, and seeing people be like, New York may have their donuts, but Philly has Federal Donuts now, and like like.
Well, you know what? I think with me too, like because of my training and being a chef, I think a lot of people are like, well, what do you think of this? And for me, like literally a good meal is just, I am very, very happy with average food and great service.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that combo, I am fucking golden.
So to you, the service is the most important part of it.
Well, it covers a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with you.
I'm very rarely wowed, and I'm very rarely wowed outside of the city.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I haven't eaten that much in New York. Probably 12 meals in my life. You know what I mean?
What's your favorite restaurant in Philly?
Regan, to be completely honest with you, I've been out of the loop for a long time in the city. Like in the early 2000s, I knew everybody. It's a very small thing. I was probably one of the best at my age at that time.
Yeah.
And then I got out of it and came and took over the family business.
Where do you like to eat though? Like if you were going to go out and you're like,
I'm simple, man. Like I mentioned, South Philly barbacoa, shit like that. Like I like bouncing around at Reading Terminal, shit like that.
Oh yeah,
like,
same.
Triangle Bar.
All of those things are great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Triangle,
it's great.
great meal there. Like simple shit makes me happy.
Yeah.
But I feel the same way that you're saying as far as like, I'm not fucking wowed. I'm not wowed so many times.
Well, I mean, it's hard to be wowed and you're saying simple shit, but like Christina Martinez spends 12 hours like making those lamb tacos, like those barbacoa tacos. Like I that is one of the best bites in all of America to me,
100%.
and so
and love comes out in food.
Yeah.
100% of the time. Like if there's passion put into it, there's no denying it when you taste it.
And that's why I feel like that's actually a great point, is that people in Philadelphia have so much passion, and I really about everything, and it actually scares me sometimes. And
we're opinionated assholes.
Yeah, and I think that actually though makes it better food. I mean, they just care about it a lot.
Yeah, we purposely raise the bar.
So
right?
I was gonna say like about the Vetri thing, I'm not throwing a stone at
you're
at
just
him.
mentioning what the criticism
Well,
is.
I think what I was saying is that like there are so many great things about our food scene that I think makes it like one of the most interesting and unparalleled food scenes in America. Yeah. And I want our food community in general to like sort of like rise to the occasion to be okay with getting criticized sometimes. So this like ties back into, do I ever want to be a food critic? Absolutely not. But
so what you're saying is his response to criticism?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not just him. There are many chefs in Philadelphia who I met and know and care about and really like, who have a really hard time with criticism. And I'll say this, like, who doesn't?
I'm so glad you're saying this.
Really?
Yes.
I'm like, I've been thinking about this a lot because
I'm so glad you're saying this.
Yeah.
I feel like this is what I was saying to a friend the other day. Like, I don't feel like as a food scene for like a major city, we can like get to that level unless we can sort of be okay with criticism in a way that's not like the Yelp criticism that's like 1 star, you weren't open today. And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't, how is that a criticism? But with smart and like smart people who actually care about this food scene, asking questions about this food scene and like holding our sort of, the leaders of this food scene, like to account for things like, should we be doing this in 2021? Like, should we be, and look, this is a question that I think I actually don't have an answer to, but one of the questions that was posed by a writer this year was like, should white male chefs or just white chefs in general be opening, Asian restaurant or like a Japanese restaurant or a Korean restaurant this year? Yes, like appropriation of food. And thank you, that was way more eloquent. But like, and I don't want to live in a world where you're not, we're only one, type of person or person who came from a certain place can cook that kind of food. Yeah. But I also think that it's a question that we should be asking, like, what does that look like if we have a person, a person who is not from that culture cooking that culture? What does that look like? What should it look like? And so I think that in order to be at the level that I think that we are at and that we should be at in Philly, I think that we should be able to ask these questions without and have like a discourse, like a dialogue about them without fear. Like I guess I feel like we're a pretty small city,
Yeah, sorry. So getting back to what you're saying about and this is just a portion of what you're saying, the appropriation of food part. Like, how far does that go? That's always my question. As far as like, do we take it like, should we have white investors? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that
Sure.
can go all the way back.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? Too, and it's like, all right, well, who's the gatekeeper on this?
Yes, and well, I think that part of the gatekeeper are the customers, you know,
Sure.
and I think part of it is like, because honestly, like it all comes back to money, you know, for better or
100%.
worse, like it's where people are spending their money. But I don't think, I mean, I think it has to do with like respect and just like making sure you're not like, look, I want to eat good food. Like I want to eat good food, and if that is whoever that's cooked from. And I suspect that it's good if it's if they're taking time and consideration to like learn about the culture or care about what ingredients they're using, because you know, whatever that
Right.
is, I think it translates to good food. I don't know if I'm articulating this well.
No, I think you are. I
but
understand what you're saying.
I just
and falling back in line to like to the criticism part that you're saying with response to criticism in the food industry. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that this industry is still yet to overcome, right? We've been behind in a lot of things ethically, right? The food industry is notorious for sexual harassment, for racism, and you know these aren't topics that I like to discuss or preach about a lot because I'm uncomfortable doing it, but at the same time they're there, right?
Yeah.
However, I do feel that chefs, what most people don't realize when they're getting into the business and they want to become a chef is that in addition to being in charge of production, you're in charge of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of those chefs, and this business was brought up, I remember working in kitchens where, you know, I had a chef that was a Vietnam vet when I was 16 years old. He used to throw fucking saute pans at us when they came out of the oven if we fuck shit up. Right, and he would drop the M-bomb, you know what I mean?
man,
And it was
you've
like,
seen some shit for
well,
sure.
listen,
Yeah,
that's
no,
what
I
it
know.
was, and
Yep.
you know what? It still is in a lot of places.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But it's not anywhere near as what it was. But that is the business, okay? And it's a microcosm of our culture, right? And a lot of times, you know, with trades like that, it takes longer to get to where it should be or could be, right? But as far as the people aspect of it, it all goes back into what you're saying as far as taking criticism. Like, oh, I'm fucking too good for a type of. Listen, we're all capable of putting bad meals out.
Yeah, of
100% of the
course.
time.
I mean, do you fuck things up sometimes? Like,
100%
I
of the
certainly
time.
do.
And we
Like,
talked about it. Like, you're only as good as your last meal. You need to internalize it. You need to be humble about it, and you need to take criticism and grow from it. And a lot of chefs can't do that. They're prima donnas. They're assholes. It's.
I mean, I didn't say that, but I do. But I do feel like it is. I have noticed, like, just in the observation, in like working in this, you know, I feel like I've gotten sort of to know a lot of folks in this industry in Philadelphia, just writing about it in the last few years. I love it. Like, I feel, I will say, like, side note, I feel really grateful for it because I don't think in my nascent writing career 7 or 8 years ago, I could have done the same things that I've done in New York here. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like
Right.
like it's a bit smaller and like easier to sort of navigate, and
Sure.
everybody knows everyone else, which is actually like, obviously that's a double-edged sword, but I see so much cool collaboration that has sort of like moved us forward tremendously, both in terms of like just interesting dishes and
Sure.
you know, pop-ups and food, things like that, but also like I hear chefs, you know, in interviews I've done, I've heard chefs say like, and I think this sort of goes back to like people think because it's a smaller community, like all boats, what's the thing?
High tide,
High tide
boats.
float. Yes, like all boats are floating because of this, right? And I remember, you know, I've talked to people who've said like, yeah, I couldn't find you know, skewers. So Mike Salmanov said, "Oh, you need some skewers? I'll bring some back from Israel next time I come back for you." Like a different, you know, another chef at a different restaurant who's, they're just, you know, there are a lot of like, instead of looking at everybody as your competitor.
100%.
Like I think you do in New York because you're like, it's fish or cut, you know, it's
a little anecdote for you. I
kill or
remember
be
when I was
killed
working
here.
on South Street, I was a head chef at a Pan Asian soul food restaurant. If I was that today, I would probably be chased out of the city as a white male, right? But I deserved the job at the time, regardless. But to go back to what you're saying as far as the network of, I remember like, again, the ethics part of this business we used to fuck with people when they were new all the time.
Yeah.
Like we would literally send
like a
people.
hazing, like,
we would
rituals,
send
yeah.
new cooks out with a pot and a lid and tell them to go get a bucket of steam at fucking JR's down the street. And then JR's would send them, no, you know what? I'll tell you what, if you go down to Rotten Ralph's, they'll give you a bucket of steam, but make sure you pick me up a left-handed spatula. And it would just go all the way down the street, and we would fucking have a ball doing it. But
that I think that's a good part of who
we're
our
the
industry is.
Yeah.
we're the land of the
That's- I
misfit
like
toys.
that.
Always
Yeah.
have been.
Yeah, and that seems like a lot less low. That's like a lot lower stakes of like, you know, than like calling someone the, you know, or just like making them feel
Yes,
like
yes and no.
Did you feel like, did that happen to you? I mean,
No, but it's very easy in the culture today to take that incident and turn it into something that was racist.
I believe that for us,
something
to
that
like
was
really,
sexist.
like sort of have it come all together in Philly,
Mm-hmm.
we just need to like be okay with asking questions and having conversations about things like this without like losing our shit about it.
Yes.
And, you know,
being able to internalize it, being humble and moving on.
Yeah, and moving on.
You
And
don't even have to change most of the times. Just fucking think about it.
Yeah. That's actually like that to me, being self-aware and like having like a moment to just like think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say too, like, look, I know how hard, I mean, even just being in the front of the house, like I know how hard it is. Like I'm not trying, I mean, which is why I don't want to be a food critic.
Mm-hmm.
It's why most of the stories that I tell are, you know, and I'm not trying to idolize chefs. Like I'm hoping we're sort of on the other end of that like we start moving away from like,
that's another pendulum that went nuts.
I mean,
it went from nothing to fame.
My God.
You know what I mean?
And it needs to, it really does. From where I sit, it needs to go back the other way. Like not to that they're nothing. I mean, you know, never, but just the power that's there like needs to sort of just filter out a little bit.
There's so much grandiosity in the business.
Yeah, and you know, and it's a creative industry, so it's like it's that, you know, sort of artist mentality. But I guess and I respect it a lot. I just think you don't get a carte blanche. Well, you just don't get you don't get a free pass to act like a dick. And I'm not accusing any one person of that. I'm just saying that like in general, I think that, you know, we have to like ask these questions, be okay with like, and even if you come back and you're like, I fucking thought about it and I disagree with you.
Sure.
And you're an asshole. That's okay too.
That moment of pause.
Yeah, the moment of pause. Yes. Yeah. And like I said, the stories that I write and honestly the ones that I find interesting are the ones, the storytelling, like a few, like at the beginning of the year, a new urban dairy just opened in Philadelphia, and I think it's definitely the first in Philadelphia right now. Like it didn't exist before that in Philly, and I think it's one of the few in the entire country. It's a guy named Yoav Perry, and he came from New York. He worked in like the fancy food consulting industry. He's done other stuff. He's also sort of a man of many hats, like Joe is, and he started making cheese. First, he started making yogurt several years ago, and then he couldn't find any yogurt that he liked in the store that wasn't like filled with shit. Yeah. And then he started making cheese, and he's really passionate about it, and he's selling it at DeBruno Brothers, and he's making something he calls the real Philly, which is a schmear. He can't call it a cream cheese because it doesn't have cream in his whole milk, but it's you know, like Philadelphia cream cheese has never been made in Philadelphia.
Right. Yeah, right.
And like for people from Philly are like, you know, maybe they like it made, like, I don't know, but like to me that would be like the quintessential thing where they're like, it's not made here, get the fuck out, you know.
Yeah.
And so he's making this cream cheese. You know, I don't know how long he'll make it. He's making a lot of cool different things. But I got to visit him and I got to like see his cheese cave and like what he's doing and how he's doing it, and you know, have a conversation about like how he got there, and they're the kind of stories that I'm interested in and I like telling. Sure. You know, I don't know, maybe that makes me, I don't know.
I guess I'm changing the subject.
Change the subject.
So you see a lot of restaurants. Right?
I just love going to restaurants.
Tell me what your thoughts are on the labor shortage and what the answer is and what you think it's going to be like.
I'll tell you the answer, Pat. The answer is, oh God. So I feel for my friends who have restaurants. I mean, this whole year, this whole 17, 18 months that we've been dealing with this, it has been gutting for me to see people I care about, love, respect, go through what they've gone through this past year. A friend of mine who runs a restaurant in Philly, who's just a great human being. In the beginning, he said to me, like, I think that anyone who goes into this, okay, is going to come out okay. And I think that people are going to be so excited to like spend money, and which is actually, that has come to fruition. I think champagne sales are up like 400%. People are eating like caviar, Yeah, I mean, it's just like people want to spend money now, even anywhere at restaurants, bars, like whatever, all of that. Be out, just be celebrating. Or I guess they were before Delta. But anyway, sorry, where was I going with this? I also know like a lot of folks who have, I know people who run restaurants and have not had to work on the line for years and are back on the line because they can't find line cooks. I'm sure you guys know people like that too. That is our problem. That's my problem. It's horrible. I
have 2 kitchens shut down 3 days a week because I can't find anybody to work in the kitchen.
So actually I'm more interested in your opinion about this.
I think, I'm going to flat out say it, I think they backdoored the minimum wage.
Backdoored the minimum wage. What does that mean? Like,
so by keeping unemployment as long as they have, they've backdoored the minimum wage hike.
Oh, like been able to raise it. Oh, yeah.
Well, they're forcing people. I'll give you, for instance, Stone Harbor. Short order cooks in Stone Harbor right now are making $20 on the books.
Yeah.
10 off. $30 an hour to cook French fries.
Yeah. Well.
And listen, maybe there was a correction that needed to be.
Yeah.
Right? But I think I'm a centrist, but I'm very against government interference in labor and industry. I think the market dictates itself, right? People get abused, yes, and that's just human nature. You know what I mean? For instance, like, I really feel like, all right, you don't like the pay in your job right now, get better at what you're doing. Raise yourself up. And I understand that's a controversial, but that's a businessman thinking that way, right?
Yeah, you're a business owner, and your perspective is that, and that is 100% understandable.
Yes.
As a non-business person.
I do also realize that people are underpaid.
I think it's
so
interesting
there is
that
a
you
correction
say
that needs to be
the
made.
backdoor correction. I mean, I agree with you because I think that, like, I'll say this. I mean, when I think about how somebody like actually physically supports their family on $7.25, like, I mean,
But I'll tell you what, right now, I don't think I know anybody in this industry that's paying less.
Oh, sure. No. Not this industry.
$10-15 an
hour.
Yeah,
for
minimum.
Sure. And I think, my perspective is like, a bleeding heart liberal is that, like, we are, as Americans, supporting these folks who are so we're supporting people that, let's say, like, work at, I don't think Walmart's paying that any, I think they raised their minimum wage, but like any, big company that's paying $7.25 an hour. Yeah. Taxpayers are supporting those folks who work there because we're paying for their, Medicare and their,
by being consumers of people that are paying
that too. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, if you're making that much money, there's actually no way 100%. that you can live on $300 or whatever that equals after your taxes are taken out. There is absolutely no way that you can actually live on that, let alone support a family. Yeah. So those people are getting government services, which we as taxpayers are paying for, sure. And so they're backdooring, like, they don't have to pay their employees $15 an hour because we're subsidizing that. Yes. Right. So I'll say that's my feeling about it. But also,
I don't disagree with that.
I also will say that, like, in terms of the restaurant thing, I think it's interesting because, yes, that's so true. So now then the market is saying,
I ain't coming to work.
I'm going to do something else.
Right.
And you know what? I was talking to a friend the other day. Actually, I just contributed to a story for Food and Wine. I think this will come out after the story, so I think I can talk about it. But it's called The New Rules of Dining, something like that. The New Rules of Eating Out, like dining out. And it's meant to be like what people should how people should behave, or like what the new rules are. It's educating consumers, and it's funny because every person I talk to it's gonna be in the October issue of the magazine.
Oh, awesome.
And I have like 2 small blurbs, and one of my blurbs was about I did 2 rules, and one of my rules was sorry, God, what did my brain is like a piece of Swiss cheese. I'm blaming my children. One of my rules was about expect smaller menus.
Yeah.
And one of them,
which I agree with.
Yeah, well, because people, what I'm hearing, I mean, I was just talking to
Fuck out of here with that 40-page Cheesecake Factory.
Oh yeah,
bullshit.
you know what I mean, and don't hate on the Cheesecake Factory.
No,
it's amazing,
good.
but you're not going to get that. And actually, this sort of ties into the criticism too. So I was talking to one of the people I interviewed was Nick Elmy, who has Laurel and a new spot in Manayunk called, or near Manayunk called the Landing Kitchen. And he was just saying, like, you know, Laurel is obviously like a luxury. It's like a tasting menu. He's like, I was paying $18 a pound for blue crab, and it's $55 a pound now. Yep. He's like, they can't find people to pick the crab in Maryland. And so that's why it's so expensive right now. Like the crab is not coming out of the ocean because people are not. And he said, and I think he had a really measured sort of approach about it, and he's dealt with all of these things, and he's actually changed, and he's been on the record about this, he's changed his pay structure. So, and I don't want to butcher this, so I would have to fact check it, but I think what he did before was like, and this is another thing, like front of house versus back of house, and the fairness of that, and these people are working so fucking hard in the back of house, I've been a dishwasher before, like
a lot of waiters and bartenders make more money than managers do.
Yeah, I mean, truly. And so he was saying, like, I mean, yes, the numbers he was saying, but what he was saying that was that, like, now they're giving everyone $10 an hour from the front of the waitresses are making, servers are making that, and the folks in the back, and they're splitting the tips evenly through everybody. So, so I mean,
it breeds mediocrity, Regan. That's the problem. Yeah.
But in what sense, if you're getting okay, so I want to hear, but so let's say like the servers are making like, $80,000 a year, or whatever. I don't know. I made up that number, so I don't know if that's, but I think his, cooks or people in the back are making like 40 to 50,000, which is like a living wage.
Let me clarify when I say it breeds mediocrity. I'm talking about when they pull tips in front of the house. Okay, it's an interesting dynamic that I have not thought about long enough to think if you're splitting it up with the back of the house as well too. But when you're talking front of the house and you pull tips, number one, great servers don't want to work in those houses because you have an asshole that comes in and is not good at their job, is getting a portion of your tip because you're getting tipped 45 to 50% by some bigwig because you know how to fucking rock a table. Or some other asshole shows up and they do half the work, they don't do the shit that you do, and they are getting portions of your tips.
Or by the way, it could just be new.
Yeah, or it could be like a new person
could
who's
be
not like
new.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, so that's interesting. I think it also depends on the place. Like Laurel is not.
Yeah,
they're
it's
not.
different.
Yeah, it's totally different. Like they're getting the highest of the high end. The servers who are like know what they're doing, who have worked in fine dining before.
And they very well could work well there.
Yeah, and you're right. That there's something to be said about different. I don't know. I also think it's an interesting free market thing where like then maybe if you suck at your or you're new, or maybe we'll give people who are new the benefit of the doubt, but like if you're a terrible server and then you're getting a lot of like from the other folks who work there, like, no dude, you can't come in here and do that.
It's self-regulating.
Right, like that's what I'm saying, like maybe there's something about a free market self-regulation there. So I don't know, but I guess I will say that
a lot of this falls on the consumer too. We have to be able to
so that's why we're yes. Oh my gosh, I 100% agree with you, and I think if we expect people to get fair wages in restaurants, we as consumers have to be okay
paying $35 for a chicken piccata at Bertucci's.
We have to be okay with paying a few, even if it's a few extra dollars for a burger, like, or the upcharge. Like I'm not trying to I'm not trying to like belittle the fact that like a few extra dollars is a lot of money for like that means something, and it means something to most families if you meet it out for my a million children that I have and whatever else. I have 3, but they feel like a million sometimes. But I think that like, so this is sort of like goes back to like the new rules of dining out. Like we have to educate consumers. I think that like so to your point too, going back to the fact that like I think it's interesting that maybe some of this stuff needed to sort of like reshift anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
and maybe the pandemic is like, and I'm not saying it's an easy thing, and I give a lot of credence to you guys who are like, but like, it's not okay that we're, you know, that folks are making below the minimum wage and we're subsidizing that, or not below the minimum wage, but like minimum wage or not a living wage, and we're subsidizing that as taxpayers with other, you know, services that that they rightly should get if they can't afford to, you know, feed their families or whatever, because we have come to expect a certain price for our steak at Bertucci. You know, like I just and then I was talking to a chef when I was interviewing a bunch of chefs for this this piece for Food and Wine, and one of them said to me, I said, you know, have you had to change your menu and make it smaller? Because a lot of folks have, and for lots of reasons, because you can't find a line cook, because, you know, like products and, you know, services have all gotten more expensive, shit, right? Yeah. She said, I just got, she's like, excuse me, on the platform that she, you know, her reservations platform, she just got a feedback from a customer. It was a review, and the person was like shitty about the fact that her menu is smaller, and it just lost something in the restaurant.
It's the power of social media right now.
I'm not even like, yes, and that's like a whole different discussion, but I don't even own that place. I don't own any restaurant. And I was seething with anger at like, how dare you I was like, listen, Chad, have you looked around? We've been in a fucking pandemic for 18 months. Like, you can't give somebody that for, I was at a cidery, a new cider place, last week with the kids in the Western Catskills. They just opened. It's beautiful. They're making this like handmade cider from like apples that they're growing on the farm. And I use Yelp a lot to like sort of navigate places. And I pulled it up to like find the directions to the place. And there was one, they had just opened like a month ago. There's one review, 1 star, because the kitchen was closed, and the people who were working there didn't seem upset, like apologetic enough about it. And I was like, it took everything I had not to be like, excuse me, Jonathan, maybe you've been living under a fucking rock for the past year and a half, but they're trying their best right now. Like they can't even get enough people to work, you know? So anyway, I
feel the same exactly. I remember my father, he used to preach this all the time. He says, you give a place 3 times. 3 times, not once, not twice. 3 times.
It's wise, man,
I mean? Because you don't know. There's so many variables.
Yeah.
There's so many things that could go wrong, which doesn't mean that they don't deserve a shot and a chance. In probably the most difficult industry in the world with the biggest failure rate, working on the lowest margins.
Yeah, totally. And
you have to be that way.
And back to just like close the loop. Back to what Nick was saying about not being able to find people to pick crab. And he said something that I've been thinking about since he said it, which was during the pandemic when nobody was fishing because no restaurants were open to need the fish, people just kind of took a look around and said, this is a really hard job. Sure. And is it ever going to open again? I mean, we didn't know anything back then. If you can like put, you know, hindsight's 2020, if you could put yourself back there were a lot of questions that we didn't know the answer to. And his point was sort of like, you know, a lot of people looked around and thought, maybe I could find another job. Maybe I could do construction. Absolutely. Like maybe I could do another thing I could make enough money, real estate.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it.
And feed my family and not do this hard job that I'm doing, you know? And look, I mean, toxic work environments and whatever aside, you know, joking about that stuff inside, as you said, restaurants are really hard. Yeah. It can be for some folks, and probably for a lot of folks, a really grueling job. Yeah. And I think, you know, I think that people deserve to make a living wage, and I hope that there's a way to sort of balance the scale with like the consumer understanding that they're just going to have to pay more money for that. Yeah. No, I just fully agree with that. And I think,
it's nuts.
So
go ahead, Joe.
I have one for you. So my first job ever, other than cutting lawns and paper out, was
taking over the world.
Building computers.
That was my second job. No, it was I went every day to the Southwest Globe Times in Southwest Philly and dropped off my resume.
No,
like not every day. I'm sorry, like 4 or 5 times. Every time I saw in the paper that they were hiring in their Southwest Globe Times, they're a weekly publication, and Lenora was the like editor, chief, whatever. And they had like a couple computers, and I was a computer guy, and I had a Macintosh, and so I knew how to use like PageMaker was like the Illustrator, the Illustrator of back in the day, and plus I could fix anything, right? So, and I had all this on my resume, and I dropped it off and like didn't hear anything back, and like found they were hiring again, so I dropped it off again, and like the third time, they were like, "All right, come back and meet some of the people," and they had like one computer that nobody was sitting at, and I went and I talked to everybody, and I said what I'm interested in, and I didn't really know anything about, like I designed flyers for like my lawn care in snow removal. I'm talking row homes in Southwest Philly.
Yeah, amazing.
Like that
Love
was my
it.
hustle.
Scrappy as hell.
So that's how I knew how to use the program, right? And so I explained it, and Barbara Highland was her name. She was like, "Why don't you come in and we'll try you out?" And so I left and came back, and I wound up working there for several years until I got another job, and it was awesome. But I was 14, so that was like why. That was why like they, I think I got hired like a couple weeks before I was 15. Wow. I worked papers and everything. I was all ready to go, but
were they paying you to work?
Yeah, and it was like whatever.
It was like a Wild West, like labor.
It was who knows?
Child labor.
Yeah, it was it wasn't.
Oh, by the way, he's got a resume at 14. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I know. Like what?
Oh, that has businesses on it.
Did I know what
14?
Did I know what a resume was when I was 14? That's so great.
But they didn't even know how old I was until I had to like fill out the paperwork for payroll, and they were like, and I was like, oh, here's my working papers. But anyway, so like I experienced like we would print everything out on paper and then cut it with an X-Acto knife and then go back on this like this wax paper thing. And so like that's my experience with print design, and now I design like flyers and all kinds of menus and anything for POS and logos and all. Like I still dabble with all that today for the business that we're in. But what I've seen, and we've all seen, decline significantly. You mentioned time. I know it, declined significantly for them is the print paper business, newspapers but media in general. I mean, the Globe Times today is maybe 20 pages. We're doing weekly with one like Joe Bartash, the owner of the print company, would like bring us like buy us lunch if we ever went over 90 pages. Like it was a big deal.
Oh my God, it makes me
we were
so
doing
sad.
weeklies of 90 pages.
Yeah.
With like 700 advertisers a week. It was big deal. And I was designing ads mostly.
That was the job that you had there.
And then you'd get the filler.
When you weren't in like 9th grade, you were like taking classes. You were going to.
I was just figured out.
Okay.
But then you do the filler, right? You get all like the bullshit stories that it's just interesting pieces that you can just dump in. So you have the whole paper laid out, you dump it all in. But anyway, I guess what I'm curious of, because you came in from what you've described at a time where I feel like digital media was taking off. Maybe not everybody embraced it yet, but it was clear that, like you mentioned, DSLR and everything, it was clear that it was transitioning significantly. What are your opinions on kind of like, how did that help your career versus, would it have been different if, you started 10 years earlier? Would it have held you down? You know what I mean? Like, I had to go to work every day at a place that I was around 5 other people in the room, and we, ads would come in and we'd design them and put them out, or in your case, you'd be writing stories, running your editor, I guess, like, and they would decide whether or not they make the issue or whatever.
It's such a good question. That's such a good question. I will say I was at Time Inc., which is now owned by Meredith, or it's no longer, it's Meredith now, but in a really interesting time where I first started working there when people were relegated to online. Like if you were an editor at a magazine and you had a 2-year contract and a 5-year contract and you had a year left of your contract and they wanted to fire you, they would remove you from that publication and relegate you to a .com, one of the websites, and it was like death. It was like dead man walking.
Being sent to the minors.
Yeah. And so that's exactly what it was. And it was like devastating. I mean, I was working on that floor and would see people come down.
Changed.
And that, times changed. And then when I started working at people.com, I remember some of the folks, and I have like nothing but great things to say about working at People Magazine and people.com. Like just everyone I know from my career is
Yeah.
from there, and like it's just such a great, smart team of people. But
It's also smart to think that way, Regan. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean,
successful people, they don't burn bridges. You know what I mean? You
oh my
build
gosh,
upon what you have.
I
Go
mean,
ahead. I'm
that's
sorry to interrupt.
I try never to do that, but and you know, there were certainly some ups and downs there, but as a whole, I would always joke that like we would sit around in the 10 o'clock morning meeting and it was like the smartest group of people. Like I would look around and be like, okay, like the editor went to like Columbia Journalism School, you know, Northwestern, Medill. We had like all these really smart people in the room, and they were all like discussing if like Kris Jenner should be on the cover of the magazine this, you know, like we were like talking about like the Duggar family and like, you know, which is not to say, I mean, that was selling papers, it was business, but I thought it was funny because a lot of those folks, because People is such a great sort of legacy, is a great legacy magazine. People had been on the staff for like 30 years or 40 years, and you know, it's not like they were jumping around today. So those folks who were used to, you know, running to, you know, having all of these systems in place and whatever, did not understand the website at all in the beginning. That has changed significantly. Obviously, it's a powerhouse now. But back then, I remember them calling it the Dot. They would be like, "Well, the people who work at the Dot." And I remember we had this editor a few, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, who came on board, and he was like, "If I hear anyone call it the Dot, they will be fired on the spot." Like it was like that kind of like, you sound so stupid. Like, I mean, it's like it was just like an old school thing to do. But anyway, it's an interesting question because I was sort of definitely there at the changeover. And I will say the other thing I will mention is, like, as I mentioned, my first story just came out in Travel and Leisure, and you guys, you know, having 800 words in that magazine, I am extremely proud of it, for sure. But you would think that I landed on the fucking moon. Like, I am getting the nice people from high school, you know, for all, this is amazing, like, congratulations. And I am truly appreciative of that, but I also am like, wow, I write for lots of national publications. It's just digitally. Like, I think that it's interesting, and my mom and I were talking about it today because I stopped.
So that tactile.
Yeah, like,
piece.
and I'll say I love magazines.
Yeah.
I get magazines. I subscribe to them. The other big thing is I read a lot. I love books and reading
Kindles?
in general. Well, no, I read on my phone a lot. I actually have the Kindle app on my phone, but I don't want my kids to always see me like this all the time. So we have magazines and, you know, and books in the house, obviously. But sometimes when I'm like reading on my Kindle, I'll just stop and pick up a magazine so that they see me reading a magazine, you know?
So, tell you how much of a nerd I am, and let me bring this back too. Since I, you know, have had a change of life at 30, I'm such a bibliophile that, like, when I get a hardcover book, I cover it in like the in the library shit. You know, what is that called?
The contact paper.
Yeah, well, I do that with
Catholic
paper.
school.
I do
Catholic
that.
school boy.
I do that with paperbacks.
No,
I'm so sorry. I'm bugging here. But 100%.
that's a giant nerd thing to do. Yeah,
I do that, and if I'm in a good book,
I've read my books apart.
I'm in a good book
apart.
I fucking download the audiobook. I have a print copy, and I have the fucking Kindle version.
What have you read lately that you?
I'm right in the middle of Sebastian Junger's War.
Ooh.
I read a lot of nonfiction.
Have you read anything by like the Devil in the White City, or like In the Garden of Beasts?
Eric Larson.
Yeah.
I read
The Garden of Beasts, I think, was one of my favorites. Yeah, it's such a good book.
Phenomenal fucking book.
Yeah, I mean, he's like that. Actually, when I read that, I was like, holy shit! Like,
So
you
it's
can report
basically historical
that.
fiction,
Right.
and it takes place in Nazi Germany. It's I think an ambassador whenever they're.
Yeah, but it's better than historical
pre-war.
fiction because he's filling in blanks, but he actually uses like all of the. He's like a masterclass in like deep dive research and reporting. Yes. It was entertaining.
So let me circle this back to print and digital. I started to read one of your articles today, the one about what restaurants are going to look like.
Oh yeah.
Okay, got halfway through it.
Uh-oh.
Please subscribe.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're
it's
pushing
such a
it so
fucking buzzkill. It so is, like, because you're like, God damn, this is good. And I was loving you're talking about streeteries, and it was a food consultant that you were talking to. with that, or no, an
Yes. How they're
And
looked at. Was that for
fucking
Fortune?
thing popped up. And you know what? If I had time, I would have bought it.
Yeah.
However, I didn't.
Yeah. So then you just stopped reading.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that for on Fortune.com or wait?
Yes,
was
yes, it was.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I mean, but like, so one thing I'll say. So yes, it's a problem. Eric, my husband, he's like, this is a terrible website. I mean, not Fortune, but just like any website that he reads any of my things on. He's like, why am I getting a million pop-ups? I think
it was like reading Rainbow. You remember reading Rainbow? Where they read a story and they were like, to finish the story, go to your local library and pick up.
No, I don't remember that. LeVar Burton did that to us.
Yes, all this.
It's her fault.
I will say that I think. I mean, I've thought a lot about digital versus. I mean, so I've thought a lot about this, and I think that the big problem, and this is like oversimplifying the problem, but the big problem is that we didn't demand people pay money for internet initially. So now people think that everything should be free, and there's a person that I really hate in the Philly food scene, and he's always fucking popping up in the comments of Philly Mag Instagram going, well, I would read this, but it's behind the paywall.
You have a website that starts with an F?
I'm going to tell you who it is after, and I'm going to tell you why I hate him. I just want to I want to reach through the fucking app and be like, do people pay you for your shit?
Yeah.
Because they pay me to write these stories.
Absolutely.
How the fuck do you think they're making money? Like, how are they paying me that money?
Right.
And so I definitely think sort of akin to.
It's like, yeah, I'll buy a magazine, but I don't want to buy a fucking year's worth. Or I don't want to have to do a credit card transaction.
Yes, but I will say I went to Barnes & Noble today, old school, and bought out all of the Travel and Leisures.
Fuck yeah, you did.
Fuck yeah, I did. Someone told me that chill is for losers because I was like, I have no chill about that. And she's like, chill is for losers. Yes, you did this. I went in, I bought them all out. They're $7 a copy on the newsstand. You can buy.
I can't believe it.
Well, you can buy an entire year for $5.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
that's
$10 maybe.
Yeah.
So like
That's the penalty.
Yeah.
It's so
I mean,
much
yeah,
easier to
it's
pull
a penalty
cash
for
out.
not just doing it.
But I get it.
It's so much easier to do that.
It's a lot more expensive to get it there.
Yeah.
To the newsstand.
Right, that's true. That's true too. Yeah, that they're just shipping it out to you. There's no middleman. So, I think that that needs to sort of fundamentally shift, just like people's dining, who work at, who dine at restaurants need to understand that there's
and it's starting to a little bit, right? As far as
I think so. I mean, we're getting
print.
paywalls, and I don't know how it's going to shake out, but I think we need to be retrained that like if you want to read good, like I pay for the New York Times because they do a really good job reporting their stories, that costs a lot of money to do that, so anyway, but yes, I think working in that sort of time frame of digital and press, where it was, I guess 10 years ago at the New York Times. Yeah. I have one friend who works in the food section there, and she's great. I don't know a ton of people. I know, like, I follow a lot of people on Twitter who work there.
That's all good.
But yeah, so I think that it certainly made it easier for me to do this career with the internet, because I mean, I think about it all the time. Like when I research for stories, like which I'm researching, I really put a lot of time, just like I'm assuming most writers do, into making the stories correct, like making sure it's like factually correct. Yeah. How the actual fuck did people do that before the internet? Like I will be like, I'll Google something and be like, is this, and I'll read like, which is why it takes me forever. It's part of the reason that I'll never make money doing this
as a
career,
teacher,
because it takes me forever.
So nuts when kids like they refuse, like they got their phones out, like, and they don't want to do any work or they don't want to answer a question. I'm like, you've got fucking everything.
Yeah, right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine what Joe McGee would be if
oh God, yeah. No,
you know what I'm saying?
No, seriously. It's funny. I'm sorry. This is the last thing that I'll say, and then you guys can finish. But I read this book. It's called Station 11. It's not nonfiction, but I highly recommend it. It's a fiction book. It was written before the pandemic, way before the pandemic, and it's about how a pandemic comes to the world and like basically kills off most of the people in the world. So whatever population is left, let's say like 1% of the population of the entire world is left. Mm-hmm. There's nothing. I mean, there's no internet. And it goes from the beginning, and then sort of midway through the book, they jump to like 20 years later. So like all of the people there are people around now who are 20 who don't know what it's like to have the internet or everything.
Right, yeah.
And there's one line of the book that I think about all the time, and it's like, you're telling me you had access to all of the information in the world.
Ever.
And you didn't learn those things. Like you didn't learn how to fly a plane. Like you didn't learn how to like, and I think about it all the time because I'm like, oh my God, if this went away, and I haven't even like tapped the surface of like of flying a plane, like you know what I mean? Or all of those things. But
yeah, I learned how to weld. It was 100% YouTube.
Oh my God.
Nobody's ever showed me how to weld. And
that's amazing.
They used to
it's
say,
not hard. You just got to do it.
No,
I had to spend $800 on a welder.
Yeah.
$2,000 on a table.
I
and
learned
all these tools and
welding in at Garnet Valley.
Yeah,
I took a welding class there.
well, they used to say you can get it's the equivalent of a bachelor's degree if you read the Wall Street Journal, every day, right?
I mean, yeah.
Well, that's what YouTube is now. Absolutely.
It's crazy.
YouTube is amazing, actually. Yeah. I met a chef once who is growing, he got a shipping container and he's like doing the vertical farming, and he's growing a bunch of like the plants and like, microgreens and like lettuces that they're serving at the restaurant. And I asked him, he's just like a fascinating guy, like a real like interesting, doer who's like, I don't know, why would I not do this? I'm just going to try it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, tell me how you learned how to do this. And he's like, I went on YouTube and looked at the marijuana growing videos.
I knew that.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yes.
I will say, I do think Philly needs to have more than one food critic. We can't just have one. And that's another
What
thing.
happened to him in New Orleans? I know they chased him out of the town, or that's at least the scuttlebutt.
Oh, wait, Craig LeBon?
20 years ago.
Oh, I have no idea.
Maybe 30 years ago.
Oh, I will look into that.
that's where
On
he
the
came
internet,
from.
I have no idea. I just think it's lame that we only have one person who's like and I think he's an amazing arbiter of taste. He knows what a good restaurant is,
Sure.
but like we should have more than one person who's like the arbiter of taste in Philly,
I got an idea who it could be.
Who? It's definitely not me.
Sitting across the table.
No
from
way.
me,
Oh
Regan
my God.
Stephens.
I can tell you all the places I like. My reviews would be just the places I like, and they'll be like, this is amazing. You should
Well,
try all these
How
things.
about we do it together? Like,
Yeah.
or
I think we
we'll
could do
make-
that.
We'll make up a pen name or something.
Yeah, we could totally do that. Yeah, I think I don't know. And that's a whole different topic for another day, but like people are saying that like the food critic is dying out anyway,
Yeah.
But I
Is
do think
Yelp?
maybe it's Yelp, but I also don't want to hear,
Yeah.
Joseph's comment about how they weren't apologetic enough. Like,
Yeah, Joe.
fuck you, Joseph.
Fuck you, Joe.
Yeah, sorry.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being
Thank you,
on.
buddy.
This is great.
Thank you so much for having me.
But I want to say one more thing.
We're excited about getting this off the ground.
Yeah,
Like again, we went to the same
guys
high
are
school,
doers.
and we met there, and we always clicked. We always had great. You got
Yeah.
me. You understood
Yeah.
me when a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't. My father told me I wanted to leave there when I was like a sophomore, and Archmere was a tough school. Tough.
Yeah, 3 hours
And
of
I
homework a
remember
night.
my father saying that the most important thing that you're doing there is meeting the people that you're going to spend the rest of your life with.
Oh, that's so nice. And he's right.
Boom.
Boom.
That's it.
He's right about that, though.